Welcome to Resistance Live. Since 2017, Resistance Live has been the go-to home for political and legal news and analysis through a decidedly progressive activist lens. I'm your host, Elizabeth Cronise McLaughlin. I'm a former Wall Street and human rights lawyer, a lifelong organizer, and a leadership and impact consultant for all those seeking to lead big progressive change in these incredibly challenging times. To get bonus broadcasts, ask questions, and more, don't forget to become a paid subscriber to the show at patreon.com/resistancelive. And to learn more about what we do to help progressive leaders everywhere, check out GaiaLeadershipProject.com. And now, here's today's show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Resistance Live for the 3rd of October, 2025. It's a Friday in Trumpland. Sorry for the cough. And it's a weirdly quiet morning. I always am a little nervous whenever Fridays start out this way on the political front. We are lumbering into day 3 of the government shutdown. However, there is another kind of strange thing happening, which is that Trump has not been seen in public now since Tuesday, and he has no scheduled events on his calendar today. The last time that this happened, there was an enormous amount of speculation over an entire weekend about whether or not something had happened to him that we did not know about. So eyes on that, very odd. But as we sit here, there continues to be a kind of like growing standoff / propaganda campaign concerning the shutdown itself. So in case you missed it, most of the government websites have now been co-opted to blame the Democrats for the shutdown. Ironically enough, the Department of Justice website, you all know I have to laugh whenever I'm at a point where things are so crazy I can't do anything but. The Department of Justice website on the same page that talks about how it's illegal, it's an illegal violation of the Hatch Act to engage in partisan politics while you're a government employee, says that radical Democrats have shut down the government. So there can't really be any debate that there's Hatch Act violations going on everywhere. Furthermore, there are reports this morning that government employees who have been placed on leave have had their out-of-office messages changed without their consent to say that the quote-unquote radical Democrats are responsible for shutting down the government. As today's thumbnail on today's video says, it's not their fault, it's Trump's fault. It is the fault of the GOP that the government is shut down. And again, we need to really hammer this because I have to remind everybody, they control the House, they control the Senate, they control the presidency, and they could very easily alter the rules of the Senate to pass a budget with a simple majority if they simply invoked what's referred to as the nuclear option. So all of this, at this point, falls squarely in the laps of the Republican Party. Yes, they are continuing to threaten Democrats. Yes, they are apparently starting to withhold funds to Democrat-related states illegally. But all that said, the longer this drags on, the more apparent it's going to be that the only people who are to blame at this point are the Republicans, is the GOP, which is now just nothing but MAGA. We have some bad developments this morning in Illinois, which I'm really not happy about, given the fact that I had been very hopeful that Governor Pritzker was going to be kind of leading the charge to protect his state from ICE. This morning at the Broadview, Illinois facility, where there was an unprovoked tear gas attack against protesters earlier in this week, Kristi Noem showed up. And as of this morning, the Illinois State Police is now assisting ICE at the Broadview concentration camp. They have kettled off the protesters into one location. They've put them behind barriers, which is never a good idea because it makes people, apart from anything else, far easier to gas and pepperball and shoot. And Illinois State Police are actively involved right now in throwing protesters to the ground and arresting them, which makes me wonder where Governor Pritzker is in all of this after all of his statements that he wasn't going to allow his state to be terrified and terrorized by ICE. This is truly not ideal. And people who were on the ground this morning, which include, once again, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, of course, running for the House from Illinois, along with other very well-known activists and organizers like Kelly Hayes. Unraveled, which is an incredible independent news site, is on site. All of the documentation right now is showing ICE together with the Illinois State Police brutalizing protesters. So this raises very serious questions to me about what Pritzker is doing. And you all should kind of be aware of that, because I know many of us have been touting Pritzker's response as something that we would like to see more of. And yet here we are with the Illinois State Police in direct collaboration with harming protesters who are out there trying to stop ICE. We have to keep an eye on this. Okay. We have word of a lingering bailout for U.S. farmers, not lingering, looming bailout for U.S. farmers. And I want people to just remember when we talk about this, because there's going to be a lot more discussion about it in the coming weeks, that the need for a bailout has been created by Trump through these crazy tariffs, and also that bailing out farmers really belies the fact that everything that DOJ was doing was a lie. Because if we're worried about excessive government spending, bailing out U.S. farmers is one version of that. I also just have to point out that they're perfectly happy to engage in socialism when it helps their base, but they object to it in every other circumstance. And that's what this is. That's what this is. So again, we've got to keep an eye on the talking points for this, which are, very important, obviously, and keep in mind that this is a problem of their own making. Okay. Partially because of the shutdown, we have no jobs report today. I actually think that this is something that we could have had. I think most people would agree with me on this. This is something that we could have had, but Trump doesn't want the jobs numbers out there. Today would ordinarily be the day that the jobs report for the prior month was released. We have no jobs report. And that in and of itself is raising very serious questions about where we are in terms of the economy. You will all remember that Trump previously fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics a couple of months ago because he didn't like the report from July. And yesterday, they withdrew the nomination for the guy who was supposed to replace the person they fired because of questionable things in his past. So we now have no head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we also have no jobs report, which, of course, Wall Street relies on in the context of gaming out how the economy is doing. And I will just say that there were some indications earlier this week that the U.S. economy, for the first time, I think since the heart of the COVID lockdown, had more unemployed people than open jobs available. And now here we are with no jobs report. So I'm going to take the circumstantial evidence of that to point in the direction of the fact that unemployment is up and job creation is way down. But I don't know that we're going to, I said this at the time when they fired the prior head, I don't know that we're going to get reliable data on jobs out of this administration again. And so that makes things very, very difficult from the standpoint of direct awareness of what's actually happening in the U.S. economy. And that, by the way, also means that a lot of people will suffer in silence because there will not be an appropriate response to rising levels of unemployment. Okay, all of this brings me around to a very important point today, because I was asked some questions this morning on the Patreon feed that once again raised questions for me about where people are getting their information. So I have to remind you all that while for almost the last 9 years that we've been here, I've talked repeatedly about the importance of vetting sources, of developing your own media literacy, of being really careful about where you're getting your news, and being really critical of the news commentary that you're getting, vetting it for experience, understanding the perspectives that people bring with them, understanding bias, because it makes a huge difference in the context of how people analyze what's happening. My biases obviously lean pretty far to the progressive left, but you all know that already. One of the things that I just want to make people aware of here is that in this era, particularly with AI and the AI bubble and AI misinformation, excuse me, at an all-time high, you have to be extremely careful about where you're getting your information. So I don't like to shout people out, but I'm just going to give an example. This morning, I was asked a question about a certain clause of the Constitution. And you all know, I was a lawyer for 15 years. Constitutional law was part of my bailiwick. It was actually also part of my favorite topic for legal geekdom for a very long time. And this person said, I was told that this clause would allow for every person in the cabinet and the president to be removed. Okay. There is no such clause in the Constitution. And in fact, The clause that this person cited is actually the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which basically says that, if you get married in one state, the marriage has to be recognized in another state. The laws and privileges and immunities of a given state have to be respected by the other state. Literally nothing in that clause whatsoever, because there's nothing in the Constitution that says you can randomly remove the entire cabinet and the president. So once again, I just have to be really, really mindful. I want you to be really, really mindful. Mouthful today. Sorry, it's Friday and the new Taylor Swift album is out. More about that in a second. I want to just remind all of you to please get your information from reliable sources. And also that sometimes things look like reliable sources on the internet when they're actually completely manufactured news sites set up by foreign or national bad actors. So you do have to be extremely cautious, okay? And again, these are desperate times, and that means that bad actors, far right-wing nut jobs, foreign governments that want to divide and conquer us will exploit that desperation with faulty information. And they are doing that purposefully to make people feel hopeless. Just as an example, there was a clause in the Constitution that said you could remove the presidency and the entire cabinet for treason, and that wasn't being taken up. That would be a reason for you to feel pretty hopeless, okay? So again, please be really thoughtful, back check, source your information really well. You all know I come here with the aim of giving you entirely truthful information, and every once in a while I make a mistake and I correct it because I'm human, but really you should be making sure that the people that you are getting your information from are ethical and well-sourced. That means anonymous accounts on the internet, particularly on places like Facebook and X, and Threads, and any other meta platform, should be taken with an enormous salt lick-sized grain of salt, okay? So please be careful. Please be cautious. All right. I wanted to address one thing here, which I have to come back to from time to time. And again, I know where this question is coming from, because it is coming from the place of wanting someone to stop this, okay? Someone asked a question about, the decision by the Supreme Court about 15 months ago on presidential immunity. So once again, I have to remind you all that there is an enormous amount of disinformation floating around on the internet about what that decision did, including from some people who I would ordinarily consider to be reliable. That decision did not allow Trump to commit crimes and get away with it. What it said was he could not be prosecuted for crimes committed in furtherance of his presidential authority while he's in office. Okay. It does not mean that if the president, for instance, picked up a gun and shot a member of his cabinet dead, that he could not be prosecuted for murder. It does not mean that. Okay. It doesn't mean that he could go out and perpetrate sexual assaults against various members of the population and not be prosecuted for it. It specifically means, however, that if, for instance, he ordered his attorney general to round up people who he perceived to be a national security threat, that would not be something that he could be prosecuted for while he was in office. Now, I get that people have been concerned for obvious reasons about the fact that Trump seems to be like railroading over all the boundaries and all the barriers and all the backstops. I get that, okay? And simultaneously, I want people to understand that doomsaying and claiming that he has more power than he does is actually something that they're relying on to ensconce their power, right? Because if it's like Trump gets away with everything, he can do whatever he wants, no one's going to hold him accountable thanks to the Supreme Court. If that's the line that you're putting out there, you are leaving people no reason to hope, no reason to get engaged, no reason to fight back. Okay, so again here, this is one thing that we need to be very mindful of in terms of the way that we message this. And let me just say one other thing here. Donald Trump can claim that he can do whatever he wants. That doesn't mean that that's actually true, okay? And one of the things we have to keep in mind here is we're 13 short months from a midterm election now. And if the House gets taken back by the Democrats, investigations into what Trump and his people are doing will start immediately upon that House taking office in January of 2027. So we have to really stay focused on our messaging, and we have to keep our messaging hopeful. And the fact that he's out there saying things like, we should all know this right now, right? That you can't believe a word that comes out of that man's mouth. Literally nothing he says is ever accurate or true. So him saying he can do this, right? You know, he can do whatever he wants is bullshit. And we should call it as such, all right? He doesn't have a free get out of jail pass for every single thing that he might do. He doesn't. And I think it's very, very important that we keep all of that in mind, okay? And I also just have to say one other thing. Doomsaying means something very specific because people are making comments in the comments here, and I'm just going to respond to this in real time. I don't do this very often. Doomsaying is specifically something that I've seen actually people do on this feed. It's very upsetting to me when it happens because my hope is that this audience by now is better conditioned than that. Sometimes you guys are not. I get it. We're living through difficult times. But doomsaying is the thing of like, America was good while we had it. There will never be another free and fair election in this country. He can do whatever he wants and get away with it, right? That's doomsaying. And I have to ask you all, you know, like particularly those who are really deeply engaged or wanting to be really deeply engaged in political organizing, which of course you all should be, what motivation do you think that kind of messaging gives to anyone who is on the fence or ostriching or maybe afraid to step out into the streets for a No Kings rally or maybe concerned about showing up to vote? You think that messaging helps those people get involved? You think it gives them courage to step forward and do the right thing? Again, words matter, and they matter very seriously right now from those folks who are considered to be reliable narratives in their own communities. And so I want people to be very, very thoughtful, even in your own despair, right? Your own concern, your own worry about what you're putting out there to people who look to you for information, okay? And if you're having a really bad day, because we all have really bad days, stick that in your Signal group chat, right? Write to your friends who, like, in private encrypted messages about the struggle that you're having to keep your head above water. Don't blast that shit out on social media. Like, really, particularly if you are someone who is seen to be a reliable voice. Because what you will be doing is de-incentivizing people to actually do the thing that we need the most right now, which is to organize and fight back. Okay. I feel really strongly about this, and I want people to be accurate. And I also want them to understand that there's this thing that comes with being an informed member of your own community. And it requires you to understand that with the power of being informed and caring so much and being empathic, you have a great responsibility to those who don't know as much as you do, or maybe are not quite so engaged. All right. Great power, great responsibility. Here we are, right? Thank you, Spider-Man. It's really important that we have the self-regulation to know that, first of all hope is never lost, okay? And second of all, that the thing that gets people involved is the idea that their own engagement, however small, can make a difference. So please do the right thing in this regard. Like, manage your own emotions, share your bad days with your dear close loved ones on private encrypted messaging, and save what you're doing out in the world from being decimated or harmed by blurting out your worst thoughts, okay? I think it's really critical. All right. Just a couple other quick things I wanted to mention today. I know that people are still very, very worried about this order from Trump concerning Antifa, which doesn't exist, and, you know, anti-fascist organizing and all this other stuff. I did a broadcast on this earlier in the week. We've actually talked about this multiple times now. I just want to make something really clear to everyone because this question continues to come up. The president does not have any legal authority to designate something as a terrorist group. Okay, just in the same way that yesterday when he went to Congress apparently and said, I am declaring that there is an invasion of drug traffickers into America, he does not have the legal authority to declare war against a group of fishermen. So one of the things that I just want people to remember here is that this is one reason why this broadcast has been here for almost 9 years, by the way, but also, like, the facts really matter. Okay. And while it is definitely frightening that he is essentially giving carte blanche to law enforcement to say, we have decided that you are part of a terrorist network and therefore we're going to kidnap you, torture you, detain you, maybe deport you. denaturalize you if you're a US citizen, throw you in a gulag. Yes, all of that is really scary. Also, reminder, they lack the manpower to carry out all of these aims, all right? So it's really important to understand what he is, first of all, legally allowed to do, because in the event that they try to carry it out, it will be stopped by the courts, okay? Don't give me any cynical BS about the Supreme Court, because a lot of this stuff won't get that far. And second of all, we have to be very, very mindful of the fact that there's a big difference between what they're threatening to do and what they can actually carry out, all right? Like, they're really low on bodies. They're moving people from other agencies into ICE to try to, like, just even get a modicum of what they're threatening done. So again, it's truly important at this point to be very mindful. And again, I did a video on this on Monday on our sister channel for the Ripple Effect Institute. Seriously, you can go watch it. It's about how to be brave under fascism. But I do want you all to kind of understand that there are still backstops. And one of them, by the way, is refusing to be terrified into silence. And it's just critically important that you understand that they are not able to do everything that they want to do, at least not right now. And the thing that will stop them from being able to do it forever is people like you and me standing up and getting organized and helping our neighbors and showing up for protests and rallies and making our voices heard. That's why they're trying to silence us, because they know that we're the ultimate backstop, right? Like, just yesterday on Blue Sky, somebody said to me, the final stop here, the only thing that will stop him is X. I get that sometimes. And I'm always like, no. The ultimate backstop is the power of the people, right? That's where our ultimate hope lies. And so I want everybody to just be very thoughtful, about the messaging you're putting out there, about the things that they're threatening, about what they're actually allowed to do, and about what we can do in response. Like, this is not a moment to give up or give in, like, quite far from it. And I'm not saying times are easy. I certainly know from the people I know on the ground at Broadview that, like, lives and bodies are on the line, okay? And at the same time, it's more important now than ever to get engaged locally where you live and to get engaged with organizations that are doing good work. Okay. The new Taylor Swift album dropped this morning. As you all know, I was thankful for a little distraction. I'll just be honest. But on that note, today at 3 p.m., there will be a bonus broadcast for all of our Patreon subscribers. I will remind you all that our Patreon is currently available at 20% off annual subs using the code podcast. You can head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive to get in on that. And if you join us, you can join us for a bonus broadcast this afternoon, where doubtless we will talk a little bit about Taylor Swift and lots of other things, because it is much more of an Ask Me Anything broadcast than what we do here live. So if you like what we're doing here, please thumbs up and subscribe. Please subscribe if you're listening to this on a podcast. Drop us a 5-star review. We would love that on the channel where you're listening to this, the platform where you're listening to this on podcast. And I will catch our Patreon subscribers on Coffee Hour this afternoon, our bonus broadcast for the week. And also, please don't forget to share this broadcast with your friends. Drop us a comment if you're watching after the live. And I will catch you all back here live next week. By the way, we have a educational video coming Monday on our sister channel for the Ripple Effect Institute. That's at Ripple Effect Institute here on YouTube. And that will be on how to build a movement in your own backyard. So that one will hopefully be interesting and relevant to all of you. And we also have a really big announcement coming next week, but I'm not going to kind of like let you all in on that just yet. So stay tuned. All right, my friends, I will catch you all back here very soon. Catch our Patreon subscribers here this afternoon. And I honestly hope Friday stays a little quiet, because God knows we could all use the break. All right. Lots of love, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye. That's our show for today, folks. Thanks so much for being here at Resistance Live. To get more out of the show, including bonus broadcasts, the answers to all your most pressing political and legal questions, and way more, head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive and become a paid subscriber. And don't forget to hit subscribe here on your favorite podcasting platform to make sure that you never miss an episode. See you next time.